How you doing, everyone? Thank you for joining us tonight. Another week of Area Scouts Procast. These are weekly lives that we do every single Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. And tonight we'll be streaming on 12 different feeds. Eventually we're going to increase that to about 25. We're going to gradually go up every single week here that we're broadcasting. So tonight we are going to feature one of our special guests. We typically do interviews with advisors, directors, and special guests every Wednesday night, and then we do a brief overview of the Area Scouts platform. We have Brian Murray, who's our Director of Baseball Operations, and our Director of Sports Medicine and Performance, Dr. Anthony Anzillo. They will be going through the Area Scouts platform. Anthony will be diving into our movement assessment, which is called BASE. And special shout out to Anthony, who won't be with us the next couple of weeks, getting married. Congratulations, Anthony.
Thank you.
You can tune in.
Congrats.
Tune in next week from Hawaii.
That's right.
So tonight we're going to do a little reverse order. We're going to have Brian and Anthony go through the platform real quick, and then we're going to do the interview at the end of tonight's show with our special guest that we have this evening. So I'm going to start off with Brian. Brian, I'm going to let you share the screen and kind of do a walkthrough of what parents and athletes see when they come on the platform. And then Anthony's going to go through, again, the movement assessment that we give to all of our athletes that come onto the platform, and we'll do a quick Q&A and then get down to our interview for the night. So you have the mic, Brian.
Awesome. Thank you, Lance. All right. So I'm just going to walk everyone through the Area Scouts program in a little bit of detail here and, give you what we do and why it's so important for athletes to get involved and get evaluated and realize what they need to improve on to be, healthier, reduce the risk of injury, and just better performing athletes as well in their sport. So we do have many directors, too many for us to go over here on this presentation, but we have directors in baseball, softball, football. Some of our sports are coming soon, so stay tuned for that. We have some big announcements coming up in different sports. So if you do want to check out who's involved with us, the majority of them are former or current professional athletes. We have some Olympians. We just have a great staff, great crew of people that are interested in helping athletes get better, helping youth athletes, youth sports, to really develop at a young age through and hopefully reach the next level, whatever level that may be for them. As Lance mentioned, we're going to go over BASE. BASE is the first step in our process. Why? Because it's really going to look at the complete outline of the athlete's overall physical foundation, which is so important, making sure, again, we're reducing the risk of injury and that we're identifying areas where the athlete can move better, can perform better, just by doing some of these very impactful exercises and tests that we perform out there doing the BASE assessment. So I'll let Anthony cover that after my presentation. So BASE is the first step. Second step is going to be an on-field assessment. This is going to be a detailed assessment that's going to look at every aspect of the sport that the athlete plays. So, we may have baseball or softball players that, pitch, they play the outfield, they play the infield, they may even catch. A lot of youth sports, kids play everywhere. So, it's important to break down every aspect of the game that they play. So we're going to take visual assessments, which means we're going to record video and break it down for fundamentals. In softball and baseball, it's going to be for catching, fielding, pitching, and hitting. Football is a little bit more position specific, where we have quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and the on-field assessment is geared more towards the position. We are also going to get a lot of metrics. Metrics and advanced analytics are becoming very important in the recruiting process, very important for athletes putting themselves up against other athletes to see where they compare from, exit velo or, top velocity as a pitcher, pop times as a catcher. There's a lot of different metrics out there that are being looked at. So we're going to get a complete set of metrics for the athlete so they know where they stand. And they also, great thing about this, they'll be able to see that progress and get better and better as they continue on in the Area Scouts program, as we are, geared towards having you move better, be flexible, be stronger, and really more fundamentally sound in what you do. So you're going to see those metrics increase through our program and through our development. Very affordable for every family to start out with us and do the base only, which includes 2 months of base development on our platform, is only $117. Again, 2 months included, and after that, you pay only $10 a month. It's the best deal out there for making sure that you can reduce that risk of injury and get what is specifically you specifically need to move better, to get better from a physical standpoint. We do have a lot of partnerships here, and constantly growing, constantly looking for other partners that do like things that we do and want to help youth athletes. So we have partnerships with the Scout Hub run by Todd Blylevin. We have a partnership with biomechanics, which is a metrics gathering system for baseball and softball. We have partnerships with New England AAU Baseball, Sports Thread, which I'll talk about and touch upon briefly going forward. And then we have some equipment that we also have partnerships with that some of our evaluators use in their videos that are correctives for the athletes, and some of the arm care program stuff that we also have and are developing. So let's take a look at the profiles. Take a look at what you see as an athlete when you go in here. So you log in here. You can also register for an account. So sign up here. You go to app.areascouts.com. You can register for a free account and take some assessments. We have 3 assessments that we're running that are free of charge. Neuro assessment. We have an unbelievable partnership with a neuro skills coach, Nathan Biddle. And we have a mindset assessment. We also have a nutrition assessment. So you can go in there and take those. And nutrition and mindset are run by former major leaguer Brandon Geyer. So all great things. Just go in, sign up for a free profile. You'll see an orange button where you can click for assessments. All right, so when you get into the profile, there's a lot of things that you can do through here. You can become a base athlete. You can become a premium athlete, which is the base, and then also includes the sport-specific development and the on-field assessment. And then this is the pro resources assessments that I was talking about. So if you click on this button, you'll be able to access those 3 free assessments that are available to all athletes with profiles here. Also, for our athletes, we can request an evaluation. You can request training if you have a question, or you can contact your Area Scouts evaluator directly. This is going to be an evaluator that is literally down the street from you. It may be a half hour, it may be 5 minutes, but we have very, very good coverage now across the country. There are still some minor areas where we are still looking for more evaluators to fill in those spots, but we have excellent coverage across the country. So more often than not, you're going to find that you have somebody very close to you. And if you don't, then we'll work with you to work virtually and get the things that you need done on a virtual basis. So once we go in here and we look at the premium material, there's a few things that you're going to be able to do. You're going to be able to enter all your stats. So you have stats through Game Changer or some other software that keeps track of your stats for the teams or travel orgs or whoever you're playing for. You'll be able to download those and then enter them into our system, so you can have all your stats going back as many years as you want. You may have 5-6 years of stats you can put in here. It's great to see, how many at-bats you had, how many RBIs, home runs, strikeouts as a pitcher, wins, losses. It's just good to have this all in one location for the athlete to see how they're progressing, how they're doing, and tracking that material. Also, we're able to put in the metrics here that we gather. So we're going to have hitting, pitching, fielding metrics, also base running metrics as well, catching metrics. Right here is an example of a hitting metrics where you have the max exit velocity, total spin off the bat, the launch angle, distance in feet. And again, we have Diamond Kinetics as a partner, but our evaluators are able to use multiple collection devices if they have access to them. So I have access to Rapsodo myself. So some of the metrics that I do are Rapsodo, but I also have Blast and I also have the Diamond Kinetics. So I kind of have the gamut. But This is also great for you to track. In December, I had a max exit velocity of 86, and now it's July, and I got reevaluated, and my max exit velocity is 91. So you can see the progression there as well. So let's get into the benchmarks. The benchmarks are what you are given after your assessment, specific to what you need to improve on, the areas of improvement that you have. So for base, the benchmarks are going to be 2 exercises per flag that you get. So you're going to get a mobility and a motor control exercise. And in this example here, it's a standing toe touch that we do as our first exercise with our test with our athletes. And in this case, the objective here is the athlete touches their toes for 3 seconds while keeping their knees straight. This athlete got a 2 out of 3, so they were only able to touch their ankles for 3 seconds while keeping their knees straight. So they get these videos. And in these videos, we have Dr. Anthony Anzillo showing you a highly impactful exercise that is going to help you get that 2 to a 3. And I always say this, I've seen athletes go from a 1 to a 3 in less than a 2-month period. So doesn't necessarily mean you have to progress from a 1 to a 3. If you really put your mind to it and you're doing the exercises regularly, you probably will take that jump from a 1 to a 3. But if you do get a 1, we're going to have different, easier exercises for you than the level 2. So it is a progression that you can take if it takes you longer than a couple months to achieve that 3 score. When it goes to our on-field assessments, now we're looking at different aspects of the game. So for this case, it's a pitching and it's the leg lift. So we have objectives over here on the left, 1 through 4, and then the performance on the right. So in this case, it was a toe dominant lift, and the knee was tracking first to third base, depending if they were a righty or a lefty thrower. And in this case, we're going to have a corrective video for each of these with a drill from our director of pitching, Josh Zide, showing you, how to stay with the stability in the middle of your foot on your post leg, your back leg, support leg in pitching, and, how to keep that vertical shin angle and come down the mound, using your back chain. And lastly, I'd like to just touch on Sports Thread. So Sports Thread is a national social media company that all of our premium athletes have profiles on. And this is where you can track your academics. You can upload videos, you can upload reports, stats, all the things that you'd want to put in a package to, say, send out to a college coach, which you can access through their platform. So sending out something to a college coach saying, I'd like you to really take a look at my video, my stats from Area Scouts, my academic scores, and I'm interested in joining your school. All right, so that's it for my presentation. I'm going to stop my share and let Anthony take over for the base.
So I'm actually going to bring in our special guests. We have JJ Lally, who's coming into the live here in just a moment. Just waiting for him to connect. Here we go. So I want to welcome JJ Lally, who is an area scout for the Chicago White Sox organization, and JJ is our special guest tonight. Thank you for joining us on the show, JJ. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Is there a button I need to push to see my video, or is that not necessary?
If you have a camera on there, it should be right in the bottom left of your screen. It should say start video.
Okay.
But
I got it.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and, JJ, right before you start, we're going to have Anthony come on real quick, and he's going to go through the base movement assessment so you can actually see this as well and kind of see what the assessment is that we give every athlete that comes on. And then we're going to have Brian and yourself talk for 20 minutes or so, and then open it up to a Q&A at the end so the audience can ask some questions after you both are done. So, Anthony, I'm going to give the mic to you, and then JJ and Brian will pick it up from there.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So my name's Anthony Anzillo. I'm a physical therapist and a strength and conditioning specialist. As Brian mentioned, every athlete that comes onto our platform, we have them start with a base assessment. So our goal, our mission for this company is to help every athlete reach their full potential. Really, that comes down to helping them maximize their performance on the field and also to stay healthy. So we start with a base assessment to get an overall foundation, a picture of how well they're able to move. It's very comprehensive. We look at all sorts of different movement patterns. And pretty much, I like to say that no joint or muscle goes untested throughout this assessment. So, based on their assessment scores and results, that are then prescribed a series of corrective exercises to address those specific impairments that are found so that they can immediately start to work on them. So, the assessment's called BASE. The acronym, we have it broken down into 4 sections. So B is for biomechanics. And in that section, we're looking at 7 different basic fundamental movement patterns. One you saw from Brian was we ask an athlete to touch their toes while keeping their knees straight. If they can do that well, that tells us a few things: that they have adequate hamstring flexibility, hip mobility, spinal mobility, and the motor control to put all those different pieces together. And if they can't do it well, then that tells us that they are deficient in one of those areas. So we have an objective scoring system for each of those 7 movements that we look at, 0 to 3. And if an athlete scores a 3, then great, tells us they're a good mover. If they score a 1 or a 2, as you saw, they'll get assigned specific corrective exercises. One to work on the potential mobility limitation, and one to work on the motor control or strength limitation. So we can try to be really thorough in improving their movement patterns. Next, we move into the athleticism section, and things get a little bit more physically demanding there. We're looking at several different tests of both upper and lower body strength, some bilateral things where we're looking at both, such as a long jump. It's looking at the power of both legs working together. And we're also looking at several different single leg and single arm tests so we can evaluate any asymmetries in their body. Asymmetries are another risk factor for injuries. So in testing for that, we can identify if they have one limb that's significantly weaker than the other, so we can provide the tools to help them correct that and therefore reduce their risk of injury. Also within that athleticism section, we have several tests of speed and agility as well, and then have the ability to compare their performance on those tests to expected performance based on averages for their age group within their sport compared to their peers. And again, provide some targeted correctives for anything that they're scoring below what we would consider ideal. Next, we move into the sequence section of the assessment. And in here, we're really talking about the kinematic sequence, which is basically how efficiently the athlete's able to transfer power from their legs through their core to their arms, where power is then delivered by the arms, just like is necessary in a lot of the sports that we cover. So a hitter or a pitcher or a golfer, all those things require those sports and those positions require that that coordinated force transfer from the legs through the core to the arms. So we have a few tests that we can perform to get an idea of how efficient they're moving and their overall power development in movements that incorporate the whole body. And again, of course, compare that performance to their peers. And then finally, we move into the endurance section. And here we look at both cardiorespiratory endurance through a running test. And then we look at core muscle endurance through a couple different plank tests. So endurance is really important because fatigue is another risk factor for injury, but it's also a risk factor for poor performance. So the more that we can ensure the athlete's resistant to fatigue, the better their endurance is, the lower we can expect their injury risk to be, and the better we can expect their performance to be when they would otherwise be fatigued and breaking down toward the end of a game or a season, things like that. So we really try to cover a lot within this assessment. And then, as I mentioned, my favorite part is that we're providing immediate targeted corrective exercises to give them the tools to help any of these deficiencies that we find. And then after that, they move on to the on-field assessment, where it can get a little bit more sports specific. But this base assessment is applicable to all athletes across all sports, and all the movements we look at are applicable for everyone pretty much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Of course.
And I'm going to open up the mic to Brian and JJ for our interview. And then, like I said, I'll be monitoring the message feed. So anyone has any questions for JJ or Brian, you feel free to ask right after we conclude the interview, and we can answer some of those questions. So thank you again, JJ, for being on tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, JJ. Nice to meet you as well.
My pleasure.
All right. So Area Scout with sorry, I say Area Scouts all the time. So you're an Area Scout with the Chicago White Sox. But we're going to go back a little bit because, most of our clientele are youth athletes between the ages of, 10 and 18, 8 and 18, but primarily youth sports. So why don't you tell us about your youth baseball experience? What type of coaching did you get at an early age? Did you play travel ball? How was your, youth baseball experience?
Well, Brian, I'm guessing mine was probably a lot like yours. We didn't do travel ball. We played Little League baseball in the summers, local Legion baseball, and then that carried into high school. It's a little different in Iowa. We play our high school baseball in the summer, so there wasn't time for travel ball. And I feel, obviously I've been in Chicago now for a number of years, been with the White Sox for 22 years. I've seen the game evolve from being a local adventure for kids to being a national one. And the importance of travel baseball is first and foremost. And I think it's great for the kids. They play a lot more baseball. They get to travel and see some different parts of the country, but it's surely a lot different than when I played.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was looking the other day to see if the big event that I kind of played in, because it's kind of like you had to make this event locally in Massachusetts called the Bay State Games. And, it was high school kids that had to try out for the teams. And I was lucky enough to make it a couple of years, and the college scouts were there. But, nowadays the college scouts are literally, there's all these travel baseball programs. I mean, they're all over the country. And then you got showcases, and you got the showcase travel teams. And, it's just, it's so different from when, you and I were kids that, the face of it is completely changed. It's evolved so much into, it's almost getting to the point where there's a travel team in every corner, right? So it's
you're
there's
missing
a lot
out if you're not involved. You're out of the mix, and these are where college coaches are going. They're trying to maximize their time. They can go to a tournament in Atlanta, Dallas, Kansas City, all these places you're hearing about, and see, get more bang for your dollar travel wise. So everybody wins on the college and professional scouting circuit. The kids are just having to pay a little more to be involved. That's the sad part of it. So
yeah, that's why we try to keep our programs very affordable.
you bet.
All right. So you played ball after your youth baseball. You played ball at University of South Dakota. I got to imagine that was a pretty short season as well.
3 was the magic number my senior year. We played in 3 days of baseball where it was over 50 degrees.
Oh man.
So
I played on the Cape, and it wasn't, I'll tell you, April baseball on the Cape, man. Woo, it is brutal. So what was your recruiting process back then? And how did you choose South Dakota, University of South Dakota?
Well, I went to University of South Dakota via Briar Cliff College first. And I was not a very highly recruited kid, 5'10", 140 pounds when I graduated high school. Junior college baseball or NAIA baseball were my only options. And I decided August 5th before my freshman year to where I was going to be going to school. So it's obviously the pressure to commit earlier is a lot different than when I played. But it was, I was not a high recruit, so I had to let it all play out before deciding that I was not going to be a Division I player. And that's what a lot of kids have to, and parents have to get really a better understanding of, is where does your son or daughter fit in the recruiting process, and what's their level, what are their expectations athletically when they go to college to be student athletes. And for me, it was an NAIA school, and then I had a medical red shirt and went to grad school at the University of South Dakota my last year. So yeah, I was a small school guy, and I could have walked on to D1 and had an opportunity to do that, but I wanted a chance to play, and so that was where I ended up.
Okay. Oh, and so did you play after college?
Yes, played 2 years of independent league baseball, in 1 year in the Prairie League, and then that league folded, and then went on to play one more year in the Atlantic League, which was a new league at the time. And so it's still around and associated with Major League Baseball. So got to play 2 years of baseball. They paid me to play. For me, it was the greatest experience of my life. Someone paid me to play the game of baseball, the game I loved. And, I had a great run for 2 years, and they can never take it away from me.
Yeah, you're in the top 1%. Somebody got paid to play baseball, right? You can always say that.
Absolutely.
So how did you end up working for the White Sox?
You know what, Brian, just like anything else, it's out of playing professional baseball, you start building a network for yourself, and you make connections, and you advance in life and in our industry in baseball through someone else's good graces. And someone was willing to take a chance on me. I worked for Mike Veck, who was the son of Bill Veck, who used to own the White Sox, and became really close with Mike. And he helped introduce me to some people in the game, and it led to an opportunity with the White Sox. And that was in May of '99, and I've been with them ever since.
Yeah, over 20 years. That's incredible. So
yeah,
when you were with the Sox, so I saw, like, on your LinkedIn page, and just looking when I do my research on who I'm going to interview, the different positions, like you've been all over that organization, and you've gone up in the front office ranks, but then you went back into the field as an area scout. So what kind of spurred those decisions, or that decision to go back in the field?
It was the last area of baseball operations I hadn't done. That was being an area scout. And I felt like, to complete the whole gamut of experience, I needed to fill that void. And I added that to my resume. And I feel like I've done it all, as far as, worked in major league operations, player development, professional. I've done some pro scouting, and now I'm doing amateur scouting as well. And so I think I've completed the full circle, and so I was trying to make myself as versatile in the game as I could, and that was the last area I needed to fill.
That's great, man. Is there something you prefer more than? What was your favorite position in the White Sox?
Well, I think this is my favorite position, actually. Well, I will say I did advanced scouting for our major league coaching staff in 2005 when we won the World Series. So that's probably my favorite. It's probably my biggest accomplishment, is being part of the amateur scouting group, the advanced scouting group for getting ready to win a World Series, and capping it off with the World Series title. But I love what I'm doing now. I've done on the amateur side, you get to make dreams come true. Whereas when I worked in player development, I had the displeasure of telling guys their time with the Chicago White Sox was up, and they needed to do something else with their life. And that was a really tough part of that job. But in this position, I get a call kid and say, "Hey, we're going to make you Chicago White Sox." And, for example, there's a kid we just signed named Ben Norman, played at Iowa, didn't get drafted. He was a fifth-year senior, went to University of Iowa, played independent league baseball this summer in the Pioneer League, And I called him Saturday and told him we were going to sign him and make him a White Sox. That's a fun part of what we do is giving a guy, he got emotional on the phone. He was thinking his professional career was winding down, and now he's getting a new opportunity to go out and compete. And that was a fun message to deliver.
Yeah, I always think of the movie The Rookie about that Tampa Bay reliever, right?
Yeah.
Holding the baby, throwing 90.
Jim Morris.
Yep.
If you haven't read the book, read it. It's fantastic. It's a great story. So
I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So you talk about advanced analytics. How do you think it's changed the way you evaluate players?
I don't think it's changed the way we evaluate players, Brian. I think it's complemented the way we evaluate players. If you're not taking advantage of the information that you have at your fingertips, then you're being ignorant. We have so many resources at our fingertips these days, and this gives us a chance to, blend the scouting side with the analytical side, and it doesn't always gel together, but when it does, and the two sides are in unison, it makes your decisions as a scouting staff more comfortable, more confident. So we've, I think as an organization, I'm really proud of what we've done. With the scouts, still their opinion still matters. They want my thoughts on a player, and they're going to look at all the different gamuts of information that's out there, the statistical analysis that goes along with it, the analytical data that goes along with it, and I feel blessed to work for an owner and a baseball department that still believes in scouts. It's I think we're, as an industry, we're on the verge of the scout meaning less, and I hope that evolves back to the way it used to be.
Okay. So what are some of the challenges? You're in the Midwest. What are some of the challenges you face scouting in the Midwest?
Well, you heard me say I played at the University of South Dakota, and so the weather is always a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really have to battle. It's a big challenge for us. I have 7 states. A good friend of mine, Stan Zielinski, who passed away, a legendary scout with the Marlins and Cubs, used to say in the Midwest, too many players, not enough days. You can't do it all. You have to prioritize sometimes on players and trust your history with these guys. We've talked about, you mentioned earlier, Brian, how these travel ball tournaments are important. We start watching guys earlier and earlier. One of your colleagues, Andrew Pincher, and I used to work together. We used to run the area code team, and I still run the area code team for the Chicago White Sox. And the time we start spending time with these guys as freshmen and sophomores in high school. That's when our history is starting with these guys, and getting a chance to watch them progress. I really enjoyed the presentation you showed with tracking a guy's history, because as scouts and as college coaches, the college coaches out there, we're trying to dream on guys. And if we could start building that history and seeing some trends go in the right direction, it makes our job a lot easier.
Yeah, it shows the commitment of the athlete too, that they're willing to put the work in, right?
Yes.
All right. So given your experience, what are the pros and cons of today's coaching, training, and environments for young athletes?
I'm sorry, Brian, can you?
Yes. Yeah. So given your experience, your lengthy experience in baseball, what are some of the pros and cons of today's coaching and training for youth athletes?
Well, I think it's gotten better and better over the years. The amount of science in our game and the training mechanisms we have, at our disposal is made, not just in baseball, in sports in general, it's made the athlete better. And so, what it's done is it's raised the bar. The bar's up here now. And so the old training methods, are becoming obsolete. And I loved, hearing some of Anthony's ideas on some of the biomechanics that goes along with it. It's a big part of what we do now. And for these guys to start picking up some of that training at 8 years old or 10 or 12, they're going to be way ahead of the game down the road because their bodies and their athleticism is going to improve at a rate that no one could ever imagine. And so it's going to be fun. But at the same time, I think the bar is raised and everybody's going to have to climb on board with some kind of training system to keep up with their competitors.
Yeah, and I was talking to a major league strength and conditioning coach recently who said that movement screens and biomechanics are being done on some of the kids that are in the recruiting, the scouting process, right? So we're actually taking a look at what's your movement screen? Is there going to be issues down the road? What are we looking at for longevity of this player too, right? So I mean, it's great.
Take a look at the first ever MLB combine from this summer. Some of the testing that took place on the athletes who attended, it would blow your mind on, how it's become a big part of the evaluation process. Strange physical testing is done different. I shouldn't say strange, it's just different and challenging, but it gives us a whole gamut more of, information to evaluate these players. And it's part of the process now.
Yeah. And I think it's an important part of the process, reducing the risk of injury. And I know it's a protection for your business, but it's also, I feel like it's a protection and a kind of an eye-opening situation to the player as well. Like, you need to improve some of this if you want to continue to play at this high level and not, have those fears of injury all the time with your biomechanics. I think it's fantastic.
It should go a long ways to prevent injury long-term in the sport. It really will.
Great. Final question for you. What's your most memorable and rewarding experiences in baseball, either playing or currently with the White Sox?
Let's see. Well, since I'm an amateur scout, in the amateur field, the probably my most proud moment, and I don't take credit for it, I give all the credit to the player, but drafting Aaron Bummer in the 19th round, and having him become a big part of our major league bullpen is, a big part of. I feel like I made a contribution to what we do in sports, and you guys are all wired the same way, just as me. Is we do this because of the competition. This is what drives us. We could all go do something else in life and probably make more money and, probably have more time on our hands to do other things, but we choose to do this because we're competitors. And as an amateur scout, I'm competing against 29 other clubs every time, I'm out seeing players. And so, getting an opportunity to take an Aaron Bummer type player in the 19th round and having it, come to fruition is a proud moment for me. But I give Aaron all the credit because, he got himself there. He had an injury and he battled back and he worked hard, and he's become a big part of our major league bullpen and our major league, our long-term success. So, but on the amateur side, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to complement the core of our team with players that'll make us a championship team for a long time to come.
Sox got a good squad too.
We're on the right path. We have to tweak some things this winter, but we'll be back better than ever next year.
Awesome. All right. So that's all I have for you, JJ. I really appreciate you coming on, and Lance is going to see if there's any questions out there, and we'll, if you stay on for the questions, that'd be awesome.
I will.
Are you going to have to listen to me talk for a little bit first? Because I have a very remote tie to White Sox that I hit Andrew with when he first came on board. So I had to just see if you knew any of this going into some people that I knew back in my day when I was playing in Florida. So first, so my brother and I owned a small gym, kind of a hole-in-the-wall place in Pompano Beach, Florida. I used to live there before. I grew up in Boston, moved there, came back to Boston to raise my kids up here. And kind of a hole-in-the-wall place, but a lot of people liked going there because of that, because no one would bother them, and we ended up getting a bunch of people in there that would have probably been approached by others if they had gone to the larger gyms. So they ended up going to our kind of a hole in the wall, and they felt comfortable there. So we used to have their sisters, the tennis sisters, Venus and
wow,
Williams.
Yeah, Venus Williams. And they used to both get on the treadmill together. The mother and father would stand behind them while they did cardio, and anyone even tried to approach them, they would just, give them a scowl, and they wouldn't be able to go anywhere near them or talk to them or anything. But it was neat because they trained there for I'd say about 6 months. So it was neat seeing them come in all the time. We had their parents lived there in Pompano. I think that's why they were so close. And we had Richie Zisk. I don't know if you know that name. That's way back. He was
with the Salem Mariners.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh for a while.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we had Chucky Carr in there from the Marlins. He played for the Marlins. He was already retired by then. And Julio Franco was in there. He actually donated.
He's probably still playing.
He was. He had taken time off. I don't know if he got hurt, but yeah, he was still playing. But he was in between teams or something. He took some time off when he was in there. He ended up donating all of his gym equipment to us. Gave us all of his stuff that he worked out with in the off season because he bought all new stuff, and the stuff he gave us probably was a year old. It wasn't even old. Nicest guy in the world too. Melito Perez. Do you remember him from the White Sox?
He was a White Sox Yankee guy.
Yeah. So the three guys that we had in there that were really really good kids at the time. They were young. And again, Andrew knew them right off the bat. Was Jason DeLero.
Oh yeah. South Florida kid.
Yeah. So were you with the White Sox when he
yes, was?
Well, yeah.
Yep.
And Chucky Clee. I don't know if you're gonna know that one. He was a Double-A kid. I don't think he made it past Double-A.
One doesn't ring a bell.
And Josh Fogg. So Josh,
of course,
Josh was and Josh played on our base. He pitched on our baseball team it was just a season or a half a season from what I remember. And I told Andrew a funny story. He was on the mound and getting kind of knocked around a little bit. And he was in the off season. He shouldn't have been out there. He wasn't permitted to be out there by probably, whoever the powers to be or whoever controlled him at the time. And all of a sudden you heard this car come screeching through the parking lot. Meanwhile, this is before the White Sox. So this is University of Florida, right after University of Florida. And he was getting lit up out there, and we didn't really know who he was other than that he was a prospect and he was going to get drafted. And so he's getting lit up by, us, who we weren't really good. None of us were really that good playing with some of these guys out there. And so the father came screeching through the parking lot. He comes running out to the mound, and he's screaming at me, you're going to throw your career away if you ever expected to make it to Major League. And we're all dying on the bench because we're like, there's no chance that he's going anywhere. He's getting lit up on this field. He's not going anywhere. And then, fast forward, I don't know, however long later, he's pitching in Game 7 against the World Series against the Red Sox for Colorado, and they were calling him the Dragon Slayer because he beat Maddox and Glavine and all the top pitchers that were in baseball. He was beating them all, and I was just like, I can't believe we were all sitting there laughing at him when his dad was like, "You better get off that mound because you're gonna ruin your career." So that's
every pitcher has a bad day, Lance. Come on. Come on, JD Martinez can go 0 for 17 sometimes, I mean, it happens, right?
I ate my words. I always wished I could see him again one more time and say, I ate my words, all right.
Josh was a huge competitor.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of an overachiever in my mind, pitched at a high level with more on moxie than stuff.
Yeah.
And so he could really compete.
Yeah, with Pittsburgh, it seemed like you'd always go 7-8 innings, and you just didn't really know how he had only let up 2 or 3 runs every single time. It was he was super consistent. I don't even remember him ever getting hurt. He just 8 innings and just lasted out there all the time. He was a closer at one point, wasn't he? With
more like 7th, 8th inning guy.
Yeah,
for us. But he wasn't afraid of any situation. You could put him in any moment. He would go out and compete. So
that was a funny experience just being around them. But so let me open this up to some questions. We have a few here. So Kevin from Minnesota, what is the youngest age of athlete that you have ever scouted?
15. 15 is usually the age where we start doing area code tryouts, and we invite some of the better, freshman kids to come out, and so that they can get some exposure to scouts and college coaches. And like I said earlier, the sooner we can start a profile and a history with these guys, the more comfortable we are later, putting our reputation on the line.
Gunther from Oregon, what are the top 3 things you were looking for out of a 17-year-old shortstop? I'm assuming that's the age of his son.
How do their feet work? What kind of instincts are they showing? There's a lot of, you start grading guys out at the shortstop position. Obviously, it's outside of catcher and pitcher, it's the most important position on the field. And, from a scout's perspective, we want to see how their feet work. Your feet are going to put you in position so often at that position to make throws, to make plays. And the footwork for me is probably what allows you to stay at the position, and decides that you cannot play at the position. You may have to move to second base or third. And so it really comes down to footwork.
I'm going to segment on that for just a second with something Brian mentioned with the presentation on what we've started to get into. So we have a separate now mindset assessment, neuro assessment with coaching, nutrition assessment, and we have partnered with a visual assessment company. We just haven't implemented yet. So I'm just curious to know, you mentioned some of the things we're doing now and how that's translating to the scouting side and baseball in general. Where do you see those 4 things in maybe a priority, and how much are you addressing any of that, and any kind of past history with athletes doing mindset, neuro, visual, nutrition training, anything like that? Where does that all fit in?
I think, Lance, I think you really are heading in the right direction, because, I mentioned footwork, but, what makes you a good shortstop are instincts. I mean, at the end of the day, it takes an innate ability to play the position. And I think some of the different devices and mechanisms you're talking about can measure those tools better than, you can run players through some of your testing and see that they're grading a little higher than others. And most of the time it's not because they're better athletes. Sometimes it's just because they got better instincts. And you can see some of that in some of the reactionary testing that they do. Some of the information that Anthony talked about earlier in their body movements. They don't always have to have the quickest movements, but they have to be efficient. And if you complement that with good instincts, there's a shortstop that I'll tell you right now that got drafted in the first round by the Twins this year, Noah Miller out of Wisconsin. He's just maybe one of the best instinctual high school shortstops I've ever seen. You watch him play, he's an adequate runner. His footwork's just okay, but he's always in position, and he never gets a bad hop, and his hands are special. But I'm talking, these are some ways you can start to measure some of the instinctual part of the game. And, that's just stuff you can't teach. You can't. And so some of the mechanisms that you're talking about, Lance, that you can use to measure some of these skills, I think you're going to find are going to be part of the evaluation process as we go forward.
We've been approached by a couple companies with that do virtual reality training, and with the glasses with the virtual. And it's funny because around the same time someone had approached us in February was kind of the first time that I got introduced to Nathan, who is our neuro coach. And one of the first things that came out of his mouth were, I'm 100% against virtual training, virtual reality, because of how it affects the mind. And it actually kind of does the reverse of what his neuro training does as far as getting them focused. He believes that some of that virtual can actually cause some that there's a conflict there, that some of that can actually cause an athlete to lose focus a little bit, even though they're using that to try to do the opposite. But so it's been I kind of laid off of the virtual reality side after seeing the results that he's getting on the neuro side.
We're going to.
I think a lot of that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, JJ.
No, Brian. Real quick, I was just going to say that we have to allow some history here to develop. A lot of these new developments, we just don't have a lot of history, and so let's gauge some of this and build a history of the testing before we decide that it's irrelevant or insufficient. So sorry, Brian, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. We talked at the same time. No, I think a lot of that has to do with also talking to Nathan. Screen time is detrimental, to the processing abilities and stuff. So
that's where he was going with that.
Yeah,
where Nathan was going.
Tries to minimize that screen time. So if you're stuffing somebody in a VR goggles for hours at a time, trying to up their game, there's that give and take there too, though, right? That you might be doing some detrimental stuff.
All right, we're going to do one more here. We got Javier from Kansas City. Do you maintain relationships with the athletes that you end up drafting that make it to the pros?
100%. We're kind of like their big brother. Playing in the minor leagues is a lonely life at times. You're away from your family, you're away from your friends, you're creating new friends, but you're playing with guys from all different backgrounds. It can be a tough time for a lot of these guys. And every time I draft a guy, I tell them we're in it together. We're in this to the end. Our names are synonymous with each other forever at this point. And, you have to be willing, to be there when they need a shoulder to cry on. It's, you're going to get your rear end handed to you over and over again in the minor leagues at some point. And when you do, it's always good to get a text message or a phone call from a friendly face with just a little bit of support outside of mom and dad, and just telling them everything's going to be all right. And so, like I said, I brought up Aaron Bummer earlier. When we drafted him, he ended up getting hurt his first summer, had to have Tommy John surgery, and, to be there for him and try to help him through the rehab process, I think had some help in his recovery. So it doesn't stop once the tag's pulled off the board. You have to be there for him and help him grow, and not as players, but sometimes just as human beings.
Yep. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, JJ, again for coming on. That was a great interview, and appreciate your time tonight. And if Brian or Anthony,
love what you guys are doing. It sounds like you got everything covered, and this is going to create a great avenue for a lot of young kids looking to market themselves at the college level, and most likely in some cases the professional level. So good luck with the start of what you guys are doing, and look forward to talking with you again down the road.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
great.
JJ.
Thanks, JJ.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, JJ. Thank you for sharing all that experience with us.
Really nice introduction, Anthony. Way to go, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to conclude tonight's live here just a couple minutes early. We have another call coming up here at 9 o'clock, so we're going to just hop off so I can actually catch my breath here before Anthony and I hop on another hour-long call. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. If you have any questions on the Area Scout side, you can put them into the YouTube chat, or you can put them into the Facebook Messenger, and I will make sure I get to those tonight, copy them, get them to Brian or Anthony with those answers for you, or you can just attend next week, and we'll be back on here again next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. So thank you, guys. Have a great night. And Anthony, again, congratulations, and see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Congrats, Anthony.